I try to record some of this, so later in the day, if some of you have to leave the meeting, you can still you still get to listen to me later. You don't get to avoid it. Sorry. So we'll go back to this aliases tab. We've kind of finished up talking about this. So the next thing we're going to do is actually move down the screen. And you'll notice, again, we're back to this shutters idea. And this shutters idea is a lot more useful on this screen, I think, than the last, because there's a lot of data as we scroll down this screen. Well, if some of this data is not very useful to me, I may find it more helpful to actually close these shutters up and only see the parts of the screen that I want to see. Also on this screen, we can reorganize these shutters, and it's going to remember this for all of our clients across the system. And it is specific to you. So if you like your to-do actions at the top and I like my proposals at the top, we can both have it our way. All you have to do to move the shutters is hover over the blue area, click and drag, and they will actually reorder. And again, it's going to remember this every time you log into the system. So it's not something you have to do every time. It's something you do once, and it's set for you for life. So the first shutter we're going to see is a pretty general one. It's an address. If there were multiple addresses, they would all be listed here. It's pretty straightforward: city, state, zip, country, and what modules this address is used by. If there were separate addresses on this client and that were used by separate modules, I would be able to see that here. For instance, if there was an AR address versus an advertising address, that would be listed. The next shutter is going to be this user-defined fields. Now, in your system, there are not any user-defined fields currently set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click over to my little test world here and show you what you might use user-defined fields for. User-defined fields can be just about anything you want them to be. So if for some reason you're looking to store a piece of data that you don't think we have a field for in the system, this may be the place to do it. In my little test world here, you can see that I have some company demographic data, like number of employees, yearly marketing spend, yearly print spend, and yearly online spend. I also have some kind of weird fields because this is a test environment. But over here, you can see I've got some other fields which might be fun or useful. I've got some social media IDs I'm storing, Twitter and Facebook. Is this person a prospective donor? And then some multi-select list information. What's important to know about user-defined fields is it's really up to you what they are. So while you're not currently using them in the system, you may come along down the road and decide there's a piece of data we really want to store that'll help us out in sales that's not currently in the system. And these are really easy to set up in the back end. I would just contact Zach or someone who's managing the system and ask them if that's possible. One of the really cool features with user-defined fields is once we've got something stored in here, we can actually create a link to that outside of the system. And what I mean by that is you can see we've got some Twitter IDs and Facebook IDs stored here. If I scroll back up to the top of my little test account, I've got this custom links tab. And under this, I've actually got these links. And so if I click this link, it's going to take me straight to Starbucks Twitter account. Maybe that's not super useful for the company. Maybe it is if I'm looking up, I want to see what they're talking about. When this becomes really useful to companies, I find, is if you have an outside system or an outside directory that clients may actually have a profile on. What you can do is create a user-defined field that links to that profile in your directory, and then we can create a custom link to that directory. So while you're in this screen, you could also click the link and go straight to that client's directory, that client's profile in your directory. So I know you guys publish some green books. You may have some directories. I'm not sure how useful this is to you, but I think it's one of those things that it's important to remember is here in case it ever comes along where you really want something added to the system. Someone just added a question, is can we change titles in the system now. So fields that are already in the system, can we just change what the title of that is? And the answer to that is no. Alon Web, it's no longer where each individual client has a different version of the system. To really standardize it and make sure everyone gets the same software, if we change the name of a field here, it would change it across the system. Now, if it's something that just doesn't make sense or you think would be more useful, certainly send that on to us and we can look at it and see if that is actually a better name for what we're calling it. But if it's something where this field is currently called employee and you'd like it changed to owner or something like that, or something completely different, then we can't actually do that. The second question coming through is, can we add titles? And the answer to that is yes. So when I say these are user-defined fields, these titles are actually defined by you in the system. You can make these up and then make up actually what data can be stored in these fields. These could be dates, they could be drop-downs, they could be data entered by you. But these are actually, the titles of these are actually determined by you in the system. So that's why I mentioned user-defined fields and we talk about it a little bit, is because it's so flexible that really anything you feel like you need to add to the system can typically be done with a user-defined field in just a few minutes. So is there anything in your company currently where you think this would be useful? Or are there any questions about user-defined fields? I know this is one of those things where it's really so broad that talking about everything you could do with it could take a long time. So if there's anything specific you might want to know or anything you think this might be useful for, you can ask now and I can tell you if that's already in there or if this is a good place to put that. Any ideas? Okay. Like I said, it's one of those things that's nice to remember is here. So if a couple months down the road you think of something, certainly bring it up and say, hey, I think we could do this with a user-defined field. So it's really one of those things that's important to remember is here. I'm going to flip back to your environment now. The next tab next to user-defined fields is publications and websites. And what this is it's actually linking websites or publications in your system to this advertiser. This is not a security feature. It's not something that says I can enter orders for this publication for this advertiser. It won't keep you from entering an order on a different publication. This is really just kind of a piece of demographic data. So in that report we're going to look at later where we can sort by CRM categories, I can also look at publications they're interested in. So it's really just, I think this advertiser should be interested in this publication, or this publication may relate to this advertiser. They may have never advertised, they may never advertise, but anytime I look up clients for the Packer, I think this guy should be getting information from me about the Packer. Or anytime I'm calling about ag business, I think this guy should be getting calls about ag business. You can assign multiple publications. And just like CRM categories, they're just going to pop in. And you can add as many as you like. You can remove these. So again, we've tried to make this as easy as possible to add and remove this data, because if it's easy, it doesn't take up a lot of your time. And if we can make it so that getting this data in is really easy, then later on when you go to pull some prospecting reports or when you're looking for people to talk to, this will be really helpful. For now, we're going to move down to the next shutter. And this next shutter is my contacts. When I first come into an advertiser, if I've never been in this advertiser before, I may notice that my contacts is actually blank. And that is because the system has assumed I don't want to add people to my database that I don't actually talk to. If I come in and this is blank, I can simply click Other Contacts for this account, view the contacts that are currently at this account, and simply click this small green Add button to add clients to my account. They will disappear from this list and jump over to this list. Once I've got a contact in my contacts list, I can do a couple of things with it. The first button here is Move to Top. This might be useful if you have a lot of contacts at this company, but there's one that really you talk to most of the time. So for instance, I have a ton of contacts at this company, but I really only talk to Victor the majority of the time. So I may want him to be at the top of my list. You can sort these, you can do this as many times as you like, and they will just continue to push each other down. The next button you will see is Remove from My Contacts. There's a few reasons you might want to remove a client from my contact, and when I click this, we're going to see some of those reasons. One of the first reasons you might want to get rid of a contact is they're not my contact. Maybe I added them accidentally, or I just clicked the wrong button and now they're in my contacts and I want to remove them. Maybe they were promoted, they've left the company, again, maybe they're deceased, maybe the contact is inactive. Now, depending on the removal reason we select, the system is going to assume we might want to do some other things with that contact. So if I click Contact is inactive, we're going to see that the system is going to assume we actually want to remove that contact from everyone's database. It's also going to assume we want to cancel any comp subscriptions this customer might have. And it's going to assume we want to set this customer's name as Do Not Use in the system. Now, all of these removal reasons are set up in the setup menus and can be changed. So if you find there's a removal reason you really need added to this list, just let your system administrator or Zach know, and they can have this added for you. At the bottom here, when I click Contact Inactive, you'll notice this red message showed up. It says you have selected a removal reason that will remove this contact from all reps' databases. The following reps will be affected and notified. So what this is it is an alert. This is an alert that's going out to any reps that also have this client in their database and letting them know I've also removed the rep from their database. So this is one of those places in the system where I said the system will automatically send out an alert to you. If it's something more simple like not my contact, you'll see it's not going to send out an alert to anyone because no one probably cares that I've removed this contact from my database. So I am going to remove this contact. And you'll see they've left this screen, and they've actually jumped back over to this Other Contacts for this account. When we're talking about my contacts, it's a good time to bring up this idea of my database in the system. As you interact with customers in the system, you're actually building what we call my database. So anytime you enter an action or a to-do or an order, anytime you add someone to my contacts list or check them as a favorite, you're actually populating your personal database. And this is important in a couple of places in the system. One is in reporting. So you can actually go in and look at a list of your contacts in your database. So you can go up and say, I just want to see everyone who's in my database and then do some sorting and filtering just based off your customers. The next place my database comes into play that's really useful is on the customer search screen. On the customer search screen, there's a checkbox that says, search only my contacts. So if, let's say, there are a lot of one particular company in the system, maybe there's a lot of Procter & Gamble's, and every time I go in and search Procter & Gamble, I get a list of 100 companies, but really, I only deal with one or two of them. Instead of searching Procter & Gamble and getting 100 companies, I can search Procter & Gamble, check, show me only companies in my database, and it will only show me the two companies that I'm actually looking for. Another example of when this is really helpful is a lot of times you'll be searching for someone with a common last name, Steve Jones or something Smith, and you may get a lot more like. You can actually sort by my database, and you're only going to get the contacts you actually talk to. So it's another one of those kind of time-saving deals that might help you down the road. Okay. Up to this point, we haven't talked about a lot of new features in the system. All the screens are new, and a lot of the data is in new and easy places, but most of the features have been in the system for a little. What we're going to talk about next is a very new feature, and I think it's something you guys are going to find to be the most useful that we probably talk about today. So the next thing we're going to talk about is email, and integrating your email into the system. What this does is it actually integrates with Outlook or Gmail. I know you guys are using Outlook, so we'll talk about that. It actually integrates Outlook into the CRM. So what that means is as you send emails, if the email address matches, then it will actually sync those emails back into the system. Now, there are actually three ways we can do this. And there are system rules with this, so we're going to talk about each one of them and the pluses and minuses behind it a little bit. First, I'm going to pop over to a screen in my test environment so you can see how this actually might look if emails are coming in and out. So the first option we have is to sync all emails. And what that is going to do is it's going to look in your email account and try to find a matching email address. And if it finds a matching email address, then it will sync those emails back into the system. So the question I often get here is, well, what about emails to my husband or my wife? And the thing I always say is, well, is your husband or wife's email in the system? If the answer is no, then those emails won't sync back. If the answer is yes, then yes, those emails would sync back in. So you can see up here there are 3 contacts. 2 of them have email addresses and 1 of them doesn't. So if it was linking with my email, it would go out and it would find any emails to Susan, and it would sync those back, as you can see it has here. But any emails I've actually sent to Felicia will not be synced in the system because it has no email address to match. What it is doing is it is actually making a copy of that email and storing it in the system. So with this View tab, I can actually view a copy of this email, or I could delete this email from the CRM, but it will not be deleted from Outlook. On the other hand, if you delete it from Outlook, it will not be deleted from the CRM. So you could go through and clean up all your emails in your Outlook account, but still leave the emails in here as a note. If there are attachments stored on the email, this box will be checked. However, the attachments are not actually stored in the system. To view the attachments, you would actually have to go back to your email. So the first option is actually the easiest. It's sync all, and you really don't have to think about it. Anytime you open up the CRM, it's going to go out and look for new emails from your clients and sync them back into the system automatically. As you can see here, it's actually not just going to sync emails I've sent, but the replies to those emails. So if a customer has replied back to me, I don't have to go out and copy and paste that email into the system. The system's going to recognize that was a reply, and it's going to automatically push that into the system. So that's kind of the first option, is sync all. The second option is to sync none. So we turn it off. And you kind of go back to what you're doing now, which is maybe copying and pasting emails into the system or sending an email and then making sure it gets into a note. The third option is we can set up a folder in Outlook and tell the system only look for emails that are in that folder and sync those emails. Now, what that does mean is there is an extra step for you. So you actually have to go in, and if you want the email to sync to the system, you would have to drag it into a folder, and then when the system goes out and looks for emails, it will only look for emails in that folder. Now, this is a universal decision. So it's really a company decision. If one person decides, I want to have folders, and the other person decides, I want to sync all, we can't actually do that. So it is one of those things where it's a business decision that we kind of have to talk through and decide what's going to be right for us and then move forward. So this is a completely new aspect to the system, and it's a really strong integration between Outlook and the system. So I'm going to pause here for a minute and kind of ask if you guys have any questions on how this works, because I know this is a really new feature, and typically this raises a lot of questions of how is this going to work, what emails are going to sync. So I'm going to pause here for a moment and see if you guys have any questions or comments about how this might work for you.
I have a question.
Okay.
I can see this as really advantageous because one of the flaws one of the needs right now is for production and or like Dina being able to look at IOs when they come in or production information that comes in. But you're telling me that the attachments cannot be opened in here, so that you really couldn't use it for that, could you?
Right. The attachments would still be stored in your email. There is a place to attach documents that we're going to go over in just a moment, but we can only attach documents currently that are actually stored somewhere online, so somewhere in the cloud. It couldn't be a local document to your computer. It would have to be something stored in a Google Drive or Microsoft's cloud or Amazon's cloud, something like that. So if you have a place that you're storing those IOs, maybe we can actually link to those. I know there was some talk yesterday with Zach about possibly being able to make that happen, but it's one of those things they're still looking over.
Okay.
So, and again, this is going to sync all emails. So I know yesterday one of the concerns was, well, this might get messy with you see some of these emails are just short and sweet. This is just a reply that says thanks. So we did decide you may want to actually clean this up. And so you can delete emails, as I mentioned earlier, delete emails from here and not delete emails from your email account, or delete emails from your email account and not delete emails from here. So this is one of those things I find with sales is typically a huge time saver, because sending out emails in Outlook and then having to come copy and paste those back into the system can really seem like double duty and doesn't really add any value to your sales process. So being able to connect these two things, I find a lot of value, and typically salespeople really enjoy this, or people who are involved in the sales process. Okay. If for some reason you ever come into the account once this is turned on and you don't see an email that you think you should see, there is the idea of force email sync. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, okay, I haven't looked for your emails in a minute. I'm going to go out and search all of your clients and all of your emails and match them up. Now, this does run in the background of the system, so it's not actually going to be loading on your screen. You won't notice any performance issues. It's just going to run in the background, and you can continue on with your life.
Brendan, I'm sorry, I missed that part about attachments. Did you say attachments would not be synced in to Along?
That's correct. This box would be checked if there was an attachment with that email. However, currently we're not storing the attachments in the database. And one of the reasons we've been discussing this, we're looking for a solution right now, but there are some security issues with allowing attachments that came in via your email to be stored on our servers. As this is a cloud-based software, it's actually running on our servers, which are also PCI compliant for credit cards and storing large amounts of your data. So there is some concern about what could come into your email filters and then be saved to our servers. So right now we're looking for a solution, but at this moment, no, it would only let you know there was an attachment with that email.
Okay. You're probably looking for some kind of antivirus software to scan them on your side before they're stored?
Yeah, exactly. And so those are some of the kind of things we're looking for is what do we stop and check those again, or is there a better way to store them not in the same place that your data actually lies on? So we're looking into some solutions in this right now. I don't love this, but currently this is kind of where we're at to protect the data and the PCI compliance that Elan is, that Media Services Group is.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep. So we will switch back to your live data. You can see I just turned this on so we could go through the demo today. They are working on an integration with your version of Outlook currently that could be ready, I think they were talking about 30 days from now. So this can't be turned on just at this moment, but it is coming. You guys have a different version of Outlook than some of our other clients, so we're working on tapping into that.
I think we can expect to see it around April.
Yeah.
I believe that's what we determined. Sorry.
So if you're really excited about this, hopefully April is when it could be turned on and you can start utilizing it. But I wanted to show it to you today so you have an idea of how it works, so when it does turn on, you can start using it immediately. So we move on from emails. The next two shutters we're going to talk about a little bit in tandem because they do relate to each other. The first one is notes, and the second one is to-dos. So in the system, there is the idea of a note, which is more of a static object on a company. And then there's the idea of a to-do action, which is something that's probably going to be checked off and done later. So sometimes you would see in a note maybe call back tomorrow and then a to-do action scheduled. Well, call back tomorrow is not really a great note. It's really a to-do action. It's something that I'm going to check off and be done with. And then I may actually add a note about what that client told me on the phone or what we talked about, maybe what we want to talk about later. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this line of notes. And you can see currently the old system didn't allow you to do much in the notes field except for maybe add text. It actually didn't even really like you to copy and paste text in because of some of the formatting from the web or wherever you were copying and pasting. We've completely redone this part of the notes, and it's going to allow for some really cool stuff. And to show you what it might allow, I'm actually going to click back over to my test environment. So in the notes field, you can actually see in my notes field, I've actually got some pretty interesting things stored in here. This is an image of an ad that's running in Starbucks. I've actually got down here some articles about Starbucks. So maybe with my client, I actually saw that they're running a new campaign. And when I come into this record, I would like to remember what that campaign is running. Well, an image is a lot more powerful to me than writing down new not instant campaign, remember to talk about next issue. Actually seeing a picture of the ad may be a lot more useful to me. I can actually talk about the campaign, I can look at it, and the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, is really true here. I can kind of visualize what they're trying to do and really call my clients and talk about it. So that may be useful. You can see this is an article. It's copy and pasted directly from the web. And then down here, I've actually got some links that link out to things on the web. So what we're going to do is go into a note and show you exactly how I got those in there. So the first thing you'll probably do most of the time is this add a new note button. I'm going to click add a new note, and I'm going to see my notes page. There's a couple of drop downs. The first one is going to be product type. This is going to default into publication and website because that's what you're going to be using the majority of the time. If for some reason this was in regards to an exhibition order, we could check that. Now here's the products tab, and this is just going to allow us to actually relate this note to a publication or website in our system. The next note we're going to see is if this is a note on a company, I may actually want to attach a contact. So I probably actually called someone. Let's say I called Doug. And now in this field, it's just like the notes field before. We can simply type in it. But it's also got this editor above it. And this editor is just like a word editor. I can highlight these things, bold them. If I'm really fancy, I could change the colors. And it's going to store the note in this fashion. If I found something on the internet that I want to put into my note, I can simply copy that material, right-click, and paste it into my note. It's going to keep the formatting, it's not going to care where I got it from, and it's going to save the note just like this. So they've really revamped the notes feature to allow you to include just about anything you can imagine in it. And I think this becomes really useful, if you're getting creative and you start determining notes are more things related to a company. So I want to know what, that they just released their earnings report, and I want to actually store that earnings report in the system so that people can see it. This is a article about Starbucks moving to India, and it's their year anniversary of that. Maybe they're really pushing that, or when I talk to them today, I'd really like to mention this article and talk about what they're doing to push that initiative. So the notes field has gotten a lot more useful, I believe. Also, it's a lot less finicky. So even if you are copying and pasting something from, say, an email, say you choose not to use the email function, you're copying and pasting, it's not going to be as picky about what you copy and paste into it. I find this causes a lot less issues for people on our end. There's not characters missing. You don't have to worry about, is this going to show up correctly or not? It's going to show up just the way you copy and pasted it. I'm not going to save this note because this is your live data, and I don't want to put a note in against this client. As the notes are stored, they are just going to scroll down the screen, and you can see at the bottom here we have a paging mechanism. So right now it's just displaying this group of notes, but there are more notes, and just like you might see on a lot of areas on the web, we can page to the next one, or we can select which page I want to search. I could also decide I actually want to see more items than are being displayed on this page here, and I could type in a number here, click change, and it's going to display the number that I suggested. Again, these blue headings are sortable, so if you're looking for a specific note and you're not seeing it here, and maybe you want to pull up what contact it is about, I could sort by contact and then find my contact. If a note has gotten stale, or it was just a mistake and I'd like to hide it from my active notes list, I can click this archive button and send this note into a note archive. You can view the archive notes. There's a drop down right here that says view current notes. If I click that, you'll see I do have the option to view archived notes. If I view archived notes, we're actually going to send a note to the archive. I'll show you. So I'm actually going to archive this note, go and view my archive, and from the archive you can see if for some reason I've made a mistake and did not mean to archive this note, there is an undo button inside of the archive. I can simply select my little green arrow, go back to my current notes, and no harm is done. So pretty standard process, at least for entering notes, pretty simple. The next thing you might see next to notes, depending on your security, are credit control notes. Credit control notes might be useful to you if you're about to call a client and something's been happening on their record where collections has been reaching out to them. Depending on your security, you may be able to add a new credit and collections note. Most of the time I see this as mostly a view-only option. So right here I can see that an invoice was actually emailed to them recently. If they were having problems with an invoice, I might like to know that before I call them, because likely the customer is going to ask me about that issue. You're the point of contact of that customer, so naturally if you call talking about a sale, the first thing they're going to ask you about is maybe a problem they're having or something they haven't been followed up with yet. So this is a nice area to be able to look at and see, is there a problem I'm walking into before I get to it? The next part of the system is the idea of attaching documents. And this is what we were just talking about with the attachments. We haven't found a way to store documents in the system that's safe yet. So what we've done here is allowed you to link out to a document that is actually stored somewhere in the cloud. This could be, again, Google Docs or Microsoft's Cloud or something like that. It could even just be a PDF you found on a website. If someone sent you a link to, say, their editorial calendar, or if you have a link to your editorial calendar that's online, you could actually store that link here. And then when you come into this client, you remember talking to them about the current editorial calendar, click the link, and it's going to download that to your computer. You can give the URL a description, so I could say current editorial calendar, or maybe this is actually a PDF of product releases that the client has sent me. I can just type in here, product release, and I would paste the URL into this box. Click Add, and the link would be stored against this record. So again, it's one of those things that's not the most elegant solution right now, but we are working on a better way. And I think Zach's also looking at a way to make this possible for you guys currently. So hopefully we can figure this out and this becomes a lot more useful to you. So the next thing I want to talk about is a to-do item. And we're going to talk about to-do second because oftentimes when you're entering a note, you're actually wanting to enter an action with that note. So the to-do items actually include the same features as the notes as well. You're going to see that as we add a to-do action. I'm going to click Add a to-do action, and we'll start talking about how we add a to-do action. So the to-do action is going to have some extra drop-downs than a note screen did because the system is going to assume you're going to need more information if you're actually calling this person back down the road. First thing it's going to ask you is, does this to-do action relate to a contact? Likely if I'm calling someone back, I am calling a particular person back. The second drop-down is going to change some things on the screen. It's actually called action type. And when I select an action type, the system is going to default in some information. So the first thing it defaulted in is actually this short description field. I don't find this to be super useful because if I've made a list of to-dos and I see they all say call, that's not really that helpful to me. So I can't actually type over this short description and put in something like call about next issue. So it is going to try to help me, but if I don't like what's there, I can just type over it. The next drop-down we're going to see is this product type drop-down again. And again, it's going to default into publication website to try to make your life a little bit easier. The next drop-down we're going to see is product. And this is the same product that's on the notes field. However, it's a lot more useful on the to-do actions. And the reason I believe it's a lot more useful is if I assign a product to a to-do, from the CRM home screen, we can actually sort our to-do list by a product. So let's say for some reason today, the boss comes in and says, hey, we don't have enough ads in the dairy herd management issue coming up. I want you to only call on dairy herd today because we really need to fill this book up. What I can do is go into my to-do actions and sort by product. And if I've labeled my actions with a product, it will sort only my dairy herd management actions up to the top. And then I can start with those to-dos, which are now more important to me. It also could be useful if, let's say, I really like to go through and do all of my calls about one publication first, and then switch over and call about another publication. Maybe I really don't like to combine my print and web calls because I have to remember there are different statistics for each one. So I kind of get out my fact sheet and I sort my to-dos by, the Packers print edition, I go through all of my print calls, and then I switch over to my data sheet for my web edition and go through all of my web calls. So if you're using this product feature, it can be useful to you. If you find it's not that useful, maybe it's not that helpful, it's something you can skip. So we did talk about short description. This is going to be a short description which actually is going to show up on this screen in just a moment, and talk about why it might be important to you. The next thing we're going to see here is an opportunity. If I'm creating a to-do action to call a client back, I may be calling them about a specific thing in the system, a specific opportunity I've set up. If I have opportunities set up on this client, in this drop-down, all of the opportunities I have set up would be listed, and I can simply select an opportunity and tie it to this action. And then when I see my action listed, I would know exactly which opportunity it was about. The next field we're going to see is this insert timestamp. Some people found it was useful to be able to actually input what time I made this call. So as we're putting in notes, you may see that a lot of notes happened at one point. It may look like I called them 4 times in a row because the time is not stored. To show that I actually called them hours apart, I could actually insert a timestamp if I wanted to, and it's just going to populate my note with this nice little timestamp. So it might be a time-saving feature. Maybe it's not something that's that important to you. Some of our clients really like that. The next thing you're going to see is this notes field. Now, it's the same notes field we saw before, and it's going to follow the same rules. So I can copy and paste data into it. I can add images. I can put whatever I want into this note. And then when I save my to-do action, it's also going to save this note at the same time. So I went over notes first, but most of the time we find that to-do actions are going to accomplish everything you want to accomplish in one fell swoop. Down here, below the notes field, we're going to see some new options that have to do with the email integration we talked about earlier. Because we're integrating your email with Outlook, we can also sync your Outlook calendar with Elan, and vice versa. So there's this little checkbox here and says, do I actually want to sync this to-do action with my Outlook calendar? This is going to default in based on the action type that I selected. So if I select something like proposal, it's going to assume that I probably don't want to add that to my Outlook calendar, because I may send out 20 proposals today, and I really don't need those things cluttering up my Tuesday Outlook calendar, where I've got some real meetings to go to. However, if I'm scheduling an appointment, it is going to default to yes, because it assumes I probably do want to add this appointment to my Outlook calendar. Just like with an Outlook calendar, you're going to have a date here. This is when I want this to-do action to show up, when I actually want to do this item. Because we've added Outlook, we also added this time feature. You can type the date into this field, or you can select your little calendar and pick my day, and it's going to put it in for me. Next to that, the same thing with the time. If I click my little clock, it's going to pop up some times, and I can set when I want this appointment to occur. If I don't like that this action type has defaulted this in, this is just a checkbox. I can say no, this appointment is not something I want to sync back to my calendar, or yes, it is. You can assign a to-do item to someone else if you have this security. It is going to default into your name. Most of the time, you're probably just going to be putting in actions for yourself. But you'll see here, it is a drop-down with all of the people who are in the system listed. The next thing we're going to see is a priority box. These priorities can be defined by you in the system. We do set them as high, normal, and low to start out, but these can be changed to anything you like. If for some reason high, medium, and low, or high, normal, and low is not that useful to you, these can be changed by you. The last field on our to-do item is going to be a reminder. Now what this reminder is it's actually an Outlook reminder. It's not actually a reminder in Elan. So if I'm setting a reminder, what this is going to do is when I'm in my Outlook calendar, it's going to do just like you would expect you see in Outlook. An hour before my meeting, it's going to pop up on my phone or in Outlook and remind me that I have an appointment coming up. But the reminders are not actually going to be in Elan. There's not really the idea of a system reminder right now. So also, it seemed a little silly if you're already using Outlook for your reminders to try to have them in two places for you. So I can actually complete this to-do. Once I've completed this to-do, I can actually save it, and it's going to be added to my to-do actions. I'm actually going to cancel this and go into a to-do action that I have scheduled earlier so that I don't have to mess up this account. I also wanted to show you this. So once you've set up a to-do, this is why your short description might be useful. It actually appears on the screen with your to-do items listed out. So this gives me a little bit better idea of what I'm actually doing when I call this client. If these all just said call, it might not be that useful. So I'm just going to click into my to-do action. And you can see I've got a little to-do that I created earlier. Got a little photo in it. And most likely, if I'm clicking into this to-do, what I want to do is actually complete it. And down here at the bottom, it's a little bit hidden. It's one of those things I'd like to have changed, but you might see that it says completed details. And what I could do is I can click this completed details, and it's going to pop up a screen that is going to ask me some things about my completed details. Did I complete this, or am I canceling it? If I've completed it, I simply check this little box, and it's going to fill in the date, the time, and who it was completed by. So it's going to try to help me out a little bit. I can change these things if I like. You're also going to see a notes field. You're also going to see a notes field. So if you're creating a to-do, you probably want to also leave a note about what you did to complete this to-do. So I could enter a note, click Save, and my to-do is now completed, and it will be removed from my current to-do list. I just got a question that says, can we sort the to-dos by date instead of the date created? And the answer is yes. That is how the system is going to actually assume on this screen, the system is actually going to assume that you only want to see the to-dos that are this date or earlier. And it's going to organize them in a way that makes sense to call. So it's going to organize them in the order that they should be done today. On the customer screen, which we were just in, it is assuming that if I'm looking at these to-do actions, that it first is going to sort those by when it was created. If I wanted to sort them by date, I can just click this little date heading and actually sort all of them by date. If I wanted to sort them by contact, I could sort by contact. I could also sort by multiple fields at once. So again, that's back to the idea where anywhere you have this dark blue bar, if you don't like the way we have the data sorted, you can simply click one of these headings and resort the data the way you'd like to have it. Okay. It does have the idea of a list of done to-do actions or canceled to-do actions, so I can look into them. If I have this synced with my calendar and I make a change in Elan, it will make that change in Outlook for me. If I have created the to-do action in Elan and pushed it to my Outlook calendar, and I changed that action in Outlook, then it will actually change that in Elan. However, if I've created an action in Outlook, it's not going to push that back to Alon because it doesn't know that that exists out there. So it does have the idea of linking the to-do items together and changing them in either or, but if you don't create the to-do item in the system, then it can't link those two things together. Okay? So to-do items is one of those things that I go through really in depth, and it seems like they might take a long time. But I like to go through it one more time and show you how easy it is to put in a to-do, because it's actually really simple. Most of these fields are not required. So I may want to put in a contact, select an action type, pick a product. Also, any of these drop-down fields I can actually type in. So dairy herd management. I don't have an opportunity. I'm not actually leaving a note. I'm just scheduling something to be done later. I don't want to sync this with my calendar. Assign to myself. It's a normal priority, and I don't want a reminder set, and save. So it actually takes a couple of seconds to create a to-do, but the first time I go through it, I have to explain every field to you, and so it seems like it could be a cumbersome process. It's actually very simple. So are there any questions about how notes or to-dos really function in the system, or questions about how we're using them or how we might be able to use them? If not, we do have one more question that came in via the chat about maps. I want to answer that briefly. And then this is a good time to take a break. So we're almost done, at least with this part. The question that came in is on the Google Map feature that's at the top of the client page. Is there a way of viewing multiple clients on this map at once? And the answer is inside the system, no. Now, you can click out to Google Maps and actually add multiple locations if you'd like, but inside the system, no. However, the reason the question looks like it's coming in is if I'm traveling out to a client, I may want to actually see other clients in the area that I'm dealing with. And there's a report in the system we're about to go into after we take a brief break for lunch. And in that report, I can look at my database, and I could sort that by, let's say, the city or state I'm going to. And then I can even sort that by clients I've recently had an action item with. And then I could take that data and either create to-do actions for myself, or I could export it to Excel and kind of create a plan for myself. So the answer is no, not inside the system for creating multiple clients inside of a map. But yes, absolutely, there is a way to build that list and a way where you could go into Google Maps and kind of plan out your trip if you found that to be useful. It's a great question. It's also something that was asked yesterday. So it's very useful to be able to prospect by an area. Obviously, if we're paying to go out on this business trip or I have to be away from work or home, I probably want to knock out as many things as I can in an area and save the trips out there. So it's a good way of prospecting by area as well. So are there any other questions? I know we've gone over a lot today, so please let me know. I've got a question that just came in via chat. Gretchen is asking, on the mapping info you described is exactly what I'm looking for, so teaching us how to do this would be great. And once we come back from lunch, we will get into the reporting aspect. There's a lot of fun stuff I'm going to show you. I say fun. I like data. I like looking at reports. So it's fun to me. I hope you guys also like those things. And I will make sure we stop in and show you exactly how to do that when we get back from lunch. So we do have about another 10 minutes before we were supposed to break for lunch, so it's a good time for some questions about the part of the system we've gone over so far. Any questions or comments about how you guys might use it? All right. Well, sorry, another question just came in via chat. Can I add a contact from this level for a client agency link on this page? So the answer is yes, you can add a client or a contact to this page. Down here, where we were in the contacts, I apologize, I should have gone over this. if I'm in other contacts and I realize the contact I'm looking for is not here, I can click into add a new contact, and there is actually a field we should go over while we're in here. Thank you for asking that question. The system is going to assume we want to default in the employer information, and below that, there's some basic information about the contact. Name, salutation, first name, last name, suffix, informal name. But the field I really want to talk about is this job title field. You'll notice there are actually two fields next to the job title field. One is a drop-down, which is going to have some general job titles in it, and the other one is a field that I can actually type into. So what we've done here is we assume that you might want to actually report off of job title at some point in time. But a lot of job titles are very specific. So I may be the Director of Marketing, but my official title might actually be Director of Marketing for Southwest Region. And when I'm running a report, I don't want to look for every Director of Marketing for the Southwest Region. I actually only want to look for the Director of Marketing. But when I'm calling this person, I do need to know what their actual title is. So we do give you the option to either type in a complete title or select from a drop-down of titles which you've created in the system. You do not have to use both of these. You can use one or the other. Or you can use both. The other question about adding an agency from this screen, the answer to that is no, not currently from this client record right here can you add that. One of the things we were talking about Zach with at the beginning of the call is that is actually an advertiser agency maintenance. And currently there's no drop down for that, but I spoke to someone this morning and they will be adding it. So what you would have to do is we would come to the advertising drop down, and in that would be a button called advertiser agency maintenance. And in that you could actually change the agency or edit the agency for this account. So, I'm glad you asked that question. Sorry I missed the add a contact button, but that is something that's very useful. Yeah, we're actually doing, Zach was just asking me about time. I know we went for a longer break yesterday. We are doing really well on time, so if we want to, we can take a break now. And Zach, just let us know when we want to reconvene. I think Zach is looking at a 30-minute break. So if we don't have any more questions, it is nice for you guys to get a break from me for a few moments, so I think we'll go forward with that. So Zach, when do you want them to actually reconvene?
I think we should reconvene around 1 o'clock. Does that work for everyone?
Sound good?
Any objections?
1 o'clock, 1:05-ish. All right. I don't hear any objections. Sounds like we'll see you guys back here in about 30 minutes, okay? If you come up with any questions over the break, just please remember them or send them to me in the chat, and I'll be sure to answer them. Thanks, guys. Lunch.
All right. Thanks, Brandon.
Hey, thank you.